All right. It's a League of Women Voters tradition to try to start on time, so we're going to do that this evening. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this informational meeting about the Port Angeles School District's proposed capital improvement levy. And thanks to Clallam County for allowing us to use this space. My name is Paula Barnes. I'm the chair of our Voter Services Committee this year, and I'll be moderating this evening. We're going to follow a format that's a little different than our usual one. This is a bit of an experiment. Rather than having a panel of pro and con speakers, our program will consist of a presentation by the Port Angeles School District and follow that with audience questions posed to the district. Here with us are Superintendent Martin Brewer, Director of Maintenance and Facilities Noland Duce, School Board President Sandy Long, board members Cindy Kelly, Jacob Wright, and Katie Marks is here, and we expect Sarah Methner. They're going to present an overview of the capital levy proposal that will appear on your ballot, after which we'll take your questions, and the questions are the heart of our presentations. Before we get started, a couple of things. First, it's League of Women Voters policy to not allow any video or audio recording of our events unless we've approved that in advance. Thanks to our awesome videographer, Tim Bry, who's recording this meeting. We'll have a link to this recording on our website within the next few days. And you can see the URL for the Clallam County League's website on the banner in front of the dais. Next, please turn off your cell phones, including cameras and any other devices that make noise. The restrooms are out this door, right there in the hallway, and they do lock that door going out into the hall, into the courthouse, I believe, at 6 o'clock. Let me just say a quick word about the League of Women Voters. The League is a national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization whose purpose is to promote the informed and active participation of citizens in government. Our goal for this evening's meeting is to provide you, Clallam County citizens, with the information to help you be informed and knowledgeable voters. You can find more information about the League at the membership table right here, or by going to our website. Once again, the URL is on the banner in front of us, and we'd love to have you join the League. Okay, let's begin. The district will be asking for the following on the February 11th ballot, which is mailed, I think they started mailing today, as a matter of fact, mailing out the ballots today and tomorrow to everyone who lives within the Port Angeles School District boundaries. And it says, an excess tax levy to be made annually for 5 years, commencing in 2020, for collection in the years 2021 through 2025, in the aggregate total amount of $52,655,650 for the district's capital projects fund to support the construction, modernizing, and remodeling of school facilities. So at this point, Mr. Brewer, I'll turn the meeting over to you, and audience, I'll ask you to hold your questions until after the presentation.
All right, well, thank you very much for hosting this event, to the League of Women Voters and Paula for making this opportunity. We certainly appreciate it. This presentation, Noland and I have been on a speaking campaign for a better part of a couple months. And so we're probably pushing triple digits as far as the number of times we presented this, but it's our honor to do it again this evening. Our capital campaign, the theme is really one community, one district, one future. When I was hired as the new superintendent, July 1st of 2018, I was approached by many community members that indicated the school district has a problem. And I have to respectfully disagree to that. I think our community has an issue to deal with. It's not a school district problem, it's not a community problem, it's our problem. So again, our theme is one community, one district, one future moving forward. The top statement there is the mission of our district in the education of our children, K through 12. The second statement is crafted by me. I believe that our facilities need to align with the mission of the school district. As a new superintendent coming to town, I think it's really, really important, especially in a district like Port Angeles. I'm born and raised in Washington State. I've lived in rural communities my entire life. I have a pretty keen understanding of how rural communities operate in the state of Washington. But it's really important as the new superintendent that I come to town and they don't have all the answers. I come to town with a couple of good ears that I can listen, understand, and help this district work forward in a solution for our educational needs. So a big part of my work is coming to town and respect the work of the past and listen to the community. And so in doing so, I had the opportunity to review documents going all the way back to 2004. And several committees had come together over a better part of a decade to make recommendations to the school board for which our capital needs were outlined. And so this presentation, this ask of the community respects that work. I think it's really important to respect the community and the work of the past. To me, the feedback was very clear. We needed to maximize the use of our state dollars. That comes by way of SCAP funding, which is a fancy word for grants. And Noland will speak a little more about that in a few minutes. Number two, I think we need to provide a long range. I heard time and time again, yes, you went after the high school in 2014, you went after Stevens in 2018, but what's the long range plan? This is an attempt to try to communicate with our community not only our needs, but also the vision for the future and how we accomplish those goals. So this plan, I believe, does give us a long-range vision. It also needs to be a performance-based plan, referencing back to rural communities in the state of Washington. It's really important for us to deliver on the deliverables. And so, every 5 to 6 years, we come back to the vote of the people in this plan. And if we're not meeting our touch points, which the 3 keys for me are on time, under budget, and finally, facilities that fit Clallam County. Those are the 3 things that this project needs to be judged upon. But it is performance-based. And if we're not delivering, then every 5 to 6 years, this community can stand up and say, that's enough, or let's continue the good work. And finally, it needs to be a consistent rate. I heard time and time again that, I'm in a fixed income and I can't afford this fluctuation of taxes from one year to the next. So can we work to have a consistent rate over time? This plan accomplishes that. And finally, minimize the burden on local taxpayers. And I did use the word burden, and I've taken a little bit of heat, but many of us view taxes as a burden. But it's also an investment. This is an investment in our schools, investment in our community, and investment in ourselves. And so this plan minimizes that based on previous plans, in my opinion. How did we listen? I think this slide speaks the loudest and clearly around how did we listen with a performance-based plan. In 2014, we had an EP&O. That's the old M&O. We used to call it maintenance and operations. Now it's called educational program and operations. It's the same tax. It does the same work. It supports. We are funded with basic education apportionment from the state of Washington. It supports all the other programs beyond that. So our music program is funded solely out of EP&O because the state does not fund music education. Our athletic program comes out of the EP&O because the state of Washington does not fund that. When we hire additional counselors, which we do, when we hire additional mental health therapists, for which we do, those come out of our EP&O funds. It's the operational side of a school district. So in 2014, the operational tax was $3.20 in our community. We asked the voters to consider a bond for $2.19, which would have built a $98 million high school and would have been a 25-year bond. That was voted down, and that was voted down by the people. So our reality, what we paid in taxes in the year of 2014, remained at $3.20. 2018, our EP&O was $3.01. Now, if you look at that relationship between 320 and 301, you might come to the assessment that, or the conclusion that we reduced our total taxes collected. That's absolutely not the truth. We were actually collecting more money from 2014 to 2018, but the millage rate goes down as the assessed valuation of our community rises. So when we have an assessed valuation grow in our community, everybody's millage rate goes down a little bit. Doesn't necessarily mean you pay less, but it's a good sign of a healthy economy. Then we came in 2018 and we asked the voters to consider now a Stevens Middle School 6-year capital projects levy at a rate of $2.47 per thousand. Again, that failed at about 49% yes, 51% no. It was a little closer than that, but our reality for 2018 collection cycle remained at $3.01. This is where it's different. In our existing rate for our EP&O is set at $1.50. I want to talk a little bit about that. In 2019, your last year collection cycle was the first year of the $1.50. Initially, that was dictated by the state of Washington. State of Washington said we're going to fully fund education through the McCleary Act, and we're going to set the rate max at $1.50 for all school districts across the state of Washington. Quite simply, that worked for some districts and didn't work for others. And why that is if you simply take $1.50 and you multiply that times our assessed valuation, I'm going to use a round number, $3.5 billion. And you multiply that times $1.50, you get a number. You go right down the road to SQUIM. SQUIM's assessed valuation is $4.5 billion. They multiply it times $1.50, they get a number. So the reality of the intent of the lawmakers ended up being that SQUIM, with less students, collected more local money. We both got the same state dollars, but they had fewer students, collected more money because their value of their community, $4.5 billion, was $1 billion more than Port Angeles. Okay? So what the lawmakers did at the end of the last session in 2019, right at the end, said, well, we've heard from districts like Port Angeles that it simply doesn't work for us. So, and there's many districts that are in the same ballpark that we are. But they came back and said, now we're going to give you the ability, Port Angeles school districts and districts like yours, we're going to give you the ability to raise that rate. It used to be the law, but now we're going to let you raise that rate to $2.50. Okay? Because we were already authorized for $3.01 before the legislation took impact, we didn't have to take that back to a vote of the people. But this board and this administrative team, our current district board, our current district administration team worked really hard last year. Because we understand that there's a fine line between what the public can afford between our operational needs and our capital needs. So we went through a systematic approach to reduce our costs. We cut $2.6 million out of our operational budget last year so that we could balance our budget on $1.50. So the lawmakers gave us an option to raise it by $1 without a vote of the people, and we did not take it. Your rate set this year, because of the work of this board, is set at $1.50. It remains at that. And moving forward, we're committed to that balanced budget on the $1.50. Again, the performance-based side of the plan. So now what are we asking? We're bringing in a 5-year capital projects levy for Stevens Middle School at a rate of $2.62 for a total combined tax of $4.12. And that's important. I'm going to bring the next slide in here. If this passes, this would be exactly $1.11 more than what we actually paid in the calendar year of 2018. Okay? That's a 37% increase. That is not a 175% increase. But here's where the real difference lies. You can see attempt, combined rate of 539, attempt in 2018, combined rate of 548, current, a combined rate of $4.12. $1.36 less per thousand than our most recent attempt in 2018. So I think that demonstrates we are listening, we are trying to lessen the burden to our total tax base, but we do have an operational need and we have a capital need. in our district. Noland.
Some of the things we've heard over time are that we don't maintain the buildings. So if you look at the buildings that we're talking about here, with Franklin built in 54, Hamilton 56, Stevens in 1960, the building we're talking about for the first phase is 60 years old this year. Port Angeles High School, a lot of it was built in 53, and Roosevelt was built in 78. And you look at Roosevelt thinking, well, it's only 42 years old, but this is a 30-year plan. By the time we get to Roosevelt, it'll be close to 70 years old as well. One of the things that's really important to our district is, again, the safety features, and if you've been to Jefferson lately, you'll notice that we have a safety vestibule or a controlled access, whatever you want to call it. But you walk into the building and you're stopped. You have to go into the office and make sure you have the right credentials to go forward. You just can't walk in and go into the student or the staff areas without checking into the office and making sure you're supposed to be going forward. And that's a big deal to us, a single point entry. We're also developing a long-range plan that we'll share with you tonight. So the fundamentals of the plan are, it is a capital levy. So a capital levy is you collect yearly. So with the yearly collection, you can't start your construction until you have the money for the phases in hand. And it's different than a bond. A bond, if you collect it or if you pass it, you can go right into construction. And that's important when we're starting to talk about what this is. So we start with Stevens, and we establish a K5, 6, 8, 9, 12 system. Right now we have a K6, 7, 8, 9, 12 system. We set the rate for 30 years. What we're asking for is between $250 and $275 per thousand. And when we come up, and Marty talked about the performance-based, when we come up to the next phase of it, from the capital levy to a capital bond, we're not asking for an additional $250 or $275. We're asking you to renew the commitment and stay at that same rate as we go along for this whole 30-year plan. The voters, again, get to decide every 5 or 6 years whether we're holding up our end for the performance base. We maximize the use of state funds. So there are grants available for the state of Washington in the form of SCAP. SCAP stands for School Construction Assistance Program. That is the only grants that we have available to us for construction. So with the use of the SCAP funding, the square footage allotment for Stevens, with the square footage allotment for Monroe that we still have eligibility for, and with the square footage allotment for Fairview, which we have eligibility for, it's just under $18.4 million. But that money only comes if we have a voted approved capital levy. So they don't give it to you up front. You have to approve the levy first, and then you can get the money. We want to make our schools safe. Again, single point entries to all our elementary and middle schools, or the middle school, and establish a community-based facilities advisory board, which is very important to us. When we're moving forward and we're designing the schools, what they need to, what our community expects out of them, that board is something that's going to be making recommendations to our school board. So this is what the plan lays out. This is just a conceptual drawing. It probably won't look like this, but it does have certain aspects that we know that we want. First, we're going to separate the parent drop-off from a bus loop. So you notice the bus drop-off back here separating from the parent drop-off up front. If you've been to Stevens lately and you've tried to drop your students off, you know what a mess that is right now. Second thing is, as you notice, we've got a grade level addition, the yellow building there. We have not decided where that's going to be, and literally we haven't spent enough money. We know that that's the size that we need, but we'd like to connect it to the building again to make the single point entry and everything under the same roof. We know that we want sports fields. There's a couple of sports fields there and some parking for the sports fields. We're going to have another parking lot added onto it. We're going to do some modernization of this parking lot and the field. We also have ADA. If you've been to Stevens and you've tried to get from the upper parking lot down to the building, it's very, very difficult. Again, the building was built in 1960 and ADA wasn't passed into law until 1993. And so they did not have the full scope of what ADA would be when they were building this building. And right now it's a challenge for students in our special needs program we do have 2 wheelchair-bound students to try to get around the school, and it is a challenge. We're also adding on a music room. So we've got 2 grade levels there. We've got 2 music rooms. Adding a 3rd grade level with the 6th graders, we'll need another music room. Same with a place to eat. Right now they're eating in the small gym, but with another grade level addition, we will need a lunchroom and an addition to the kitchen. Right now it's not big enough to handle the extra grade level. So that's the first phase. It's 37,000 square feet of new construction. It's 18 classrooms, new athletic fields, expansion of PE and cafeteria, new music rooms, new restrooms. And why we broke it into phases, again, as I was saying, this is a capital levy. We don't get all of our money up front. The state makes sure that you have to have all your money to pay for this in your pocket before you can go out to bid. So by breaking it into 2 phases, we can start one phase sooner than try to do the whole school at one time. The second phase will be all what you see in white except for the music room. The music room is not eligible for modernization, but the main building and the gyms are going to be modernized, and we're going to take them all the way down the concrete slab and build them all the way back up. It's 70,000 square feet of construction, safety and security improvements on the facility, and it'll be a total of 109,000 square feet for 930 students. So it's 2 parts of the work. And again, this work will be over a period of 5 years. So the timeline, and so we want to make sure that people understand that we have to wait until we have enough money to do the projects. Yet, if we pass this capital levy in 2020, we don't collect until 2021. And we won't have enough money to go out to bid until 2023. So we want to keep the community engaged the whole time to show progress in this. The first thing is do single point entry for all the elementary schools. Again, that's something similar to Jefferson, but just make it so you have to check in with credentials before you can get to the student and staff area. We want to design, bid, and build Monroe Fields. The board has already invested some capital into the Monroe Fields, and so we're trying to get some soccer fields on the east side of town, and that is needed for the sports programs in this community. We're going to design Stevens Middle School in 2022, and we'll go out to bid for the new construction in 23-24. And 23-24, the end of 24 is an important date for us in our plan, and I'll come back to that. The bid and build, the modernization of Stevens Middle School in 26, and the completion of Stevens Middle School will be done in 27. So that's when the 6th graders will move up. So during all this construction, the 6th graders will stay at the elementary schools until we have built a grade level addition. We move the 7th and 8th grade into the grade level addition as we're modernizing the main building, and then the 6th graders will move up. And so the plan is, again, we start with a capital levy, and in 2025, we're going to come back to the voters and say, if you can convert this capital levy to a capital bond, we can also do some other construction for the same rate that you're currently paying. So we can build a brand new Franklin Elementary School, which is one of our schools with the biggest need, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. We've also can build a major portion of the Port Angeles High School. And so at the same time that we're doing Stevens, the second phase of it, we could be building a brand new Franklin and a brand new high school, the major portion of it at the same time. In 2031, come back and finish the Port Angeles High School. In Hamilton will be 2037. And if you remember in one of the first slides that I was to start talking about, Hamilton was built in 56. So we're not even going to get to Hamilton until 2037, best case scenario. And so I'll show you what that looks like as well. And Roosevelt in 2043. And this lays out the timeline of the plan very well. So if you see the capital levy, yeah, so everybody should have this sheet in front of you, and I'll walk through it. So you can see that we start out with the capital levy in 2020, and then we go to the capital bond in 2025. And again, if this passes and we start construction in 2023, we could have 5 years of construction in this community. That's Stevens Middle School, Port Angeles High School, and Franklin Elementary School. And then come back and do a bond in 2030 and 2031, and finish the high school, 2037 and do Hamilton's Elementary School, and 2043 and build Franklin Elementary School. So a lot of construction for the community. But this is where it really is the tale. When you start looking at the building conditions and what it is. So when we're rating building conditions, we're not looking at the carpet, we're not looking at the paint on the walls. What they're looking at is systems. They're looking at your HVAC, or your delivery of heating and air to the classroom. They're looking at the plumbing, they're looking at the electrical, they're looking at the safety systems. What is your seismic safety? Do you have fire sprinklers? What is your fire alarms? They're looking at the whole building, and then each of those systems gets a rating. So when they rate this, and let me back up a little bit. This is not the rating that the school district does. This is an architect that comes in with engineers, and they look at the systems, and they're the ones who give us the rating. So this is not our numbers. This is numbers that BLRB architects provided to the district and the state. So if you look at it right now on the top, Franklin scores at 25. So to put that into perspective, if you look down to the left in the condition scale, that's an unsatisfactory condition right now. If you notice that Stevens gets unsatisfactory condition in 2 years. But the bigger point is in 10 years, in 2030, if we don't start construction of and starting to improve our facilities, we'll have 4 buildings that hit unsatisfactory condition. And we'll be limited to what we can do as a school district as what our choices are. We won't have enough bonding power to pull us out of that condition without making some choices that aren't the best choices. If you follow that line a little bit further down to Hamilton, and you look at the 16 that is circled. So right now, Franklin Elementary has our biggest needs. If you walk into Franklin, it's not real hard to tell. You can see the needs at Franklin, and it has a 25. Yet by the time we get to Hamilton, it's going to have a rating of 16, and that does scare me. That scares me. Anyway, and that is, again, best case scenario. That's if we pass our bonds and levies the way we're supposed to all the way through this. So I also get asked a couple of other questions. Why do schools cost so much? And people don't understand a lot of the rules and regulations that we go by. First, we pay prevailing wage for all of our projects, and all of our projects are based on King County's prevailing wage. We do green building standards. So all of our buildings are built under Washington State Sustainable Schools Protocol. And with that, it's almost a carbon neutral building when it's delivered to the community. And the next thing is the earthquake codes. And a lot of people don't understand how they design buildings for earthquake codes. So schools in particular, they look back at the last 500 years and they look for the biggest earthquake that's been in that area. Ours was 9.3 less than 300 years ago. So our buildings will be able to not only withstand it, but be occupiable after a 9.3. And that is part of the things that we have to build to and why our buildings cost so much.
So on the back side of your condition assessment, you have a narrative version of an outline of the cost for this project. It's a little different format up here, but it follows the same plan. So the new side, phase 1 of construction, which is the new construction at Stevens Middle School, we use the state average for 18-19. OSPI, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, they oversee schools in the state of Washington. They produce a list of all the schools that did construction projects in 18-19. You can get it each year, but we used 18-19 data. The average for the state of Washington was $415 a square foot. Not the high point, not the low point, that's the average. We know, so we start with that number. We know that we have some site development to do outside of the construction of the building, i.e. the separation between the bus route and the parent drop-off. And again, Noland referenced that. That is of considerable concern when you have parent traffic and bus traffic and foot traffic all in the same condensed area. So the bus drop-off is considered part of that site development. Athletic fields are considered part of that site development. We know we need $60 a square foot to make that happen, bringing our cost per square foot up to $475 a square foot for the new construction. We, as Noland referenced, because this is not a bond, we're not borrowing money. There's no interest to be paid back. But the challenge with the capital projects levy is we collect dollars annually. You know, many of us pay taxes in the spring and the fall. And so each year we annually collect those taxes based on that 262 rate. Give or take, that will collect $10 million a year, okay? So until we have enough money secured for phase one, we can't take this project to the bid. The state will not allow for that. So we have contacted 3 different firms that are in the construction business and asked them what kind of cost escalators or cost escalation prices are we looking at over the next 4 to 6 years. And all 3 independent firms reference 3.5% to 4.5% a year for the next 4 to 6 years. Now, we know we have to get this deal done. We need to move forward and start working on schools in our community. So we took the conservative approach and said, we're gonna budget 3.5%. So that's where you get this cost escalation of 10.5%. That's 3.5% times 3 years. We know we can't take this project to bid for 3 years. So that's 10.5% multiplier, bringing our total per square foot to $524.88. Then we have the bid price. We have the soft cost. The soft cost in the second paragraph on your narrative form will identify all the soft costs that many of which we're required to pay. And finally, construction contingency. We know that, you know, errors and omissions, when you're talking about 109,000 square feet, they will occur. And so we need to have a construction contingency based on that at 10%. So that brings the cost of the phase one, the new wing at the middle school, to $27,771,400. Then you go over to the other side, which is the modernization, phase two. The one thing I want to point out, the state average is $100 a square foot less. So salvaging Stevens Middle School slab and any other portions that can be salvaged, we will save $100 a square foot. And I think that's good business for our community. But the other side of that is we know we won't have full collections of this dollar until 6 years out, okay? Because we don't collect a dime in 2020. We start in 2021. And so we can't take that project to bid for 6 years. So that's 3.5% times 6 years, which is a 21% cost escalation. That's $381.15 per square foot. You have your bid price, you have your soft costs, and you have your construction contingency, bringing the modernization of 72,000 square feet to $39,243,204. So then you take those two numbers and you add them up and you get a total of $67,014,604 for this project. The good news is we do have a chance, or we will provide some state assistance, which is the SCAP funding or the grants. We're using square footage that we can apply to this project from Stevens, from Monroe, and from Fairview. We were asked time and time again, what's the plan for Fairview? The board hasn't taken official action on that, but I can tell you what my recommendation is going to be. Let's collect the $4 million that we can apply to Stevens Middle School by passing this levy, and let's turn around and sell Fairview. And why I would recommend that is that building is simply too small to operate in public education in the 21st century. The prototypical model generates staffing at a 400-to-1 ratio at the elementary level. At the middle school, it's 432-to-1. And at the high school, I believe it's 468-to-1. That building can only house 220 students. Simply put, it doesn't generate enough staffing to make it fiscally feasible to operate. You know, because you got to hire a principal. It doesn't matter how large the building is. You got to hire a principal. You're going to need 2 secretaries. You're going to need 2 custodians. You're going to need a counselor, and all of those would come from somewhere else. what funding is there, and there's no additional funding for opening up a new school. So simply moving sixth graders or any one of our grades out to Fairview doesn't make good business sense. So the game plan moving forward, my recommendation to the board will be, let's collect the $4 million that we'll get and apply that, that's a part of that $18.4 million, and let's list it for sale, and let's sell that site. So that's $18.4 million that we collect from the state, bringing the grand total for the Stevens Middle School project to $48,616,199. The ballot number is $52.6 million. Simply put, we will not collect 100% of taxes. If we collect 95% of taxes, we will collect less than $50 million. Okay? Then we also have safety upgrades we want to make in each of the elementary schools, have controlled access at Hamilton, at Franklin, at Roosevelt, and at Dry Creek. My greatest fear is each of those schools, you can walk right past the office and in some cases not be noticed. That needs to stop. 21st century safety features does not include that. And so a safety vestibule will have a set of metal doors, still welcoming the community, but a set of metal doors that once you enter, your access point is the office. You cannot step into the halls and get into have access to the staff and or students until you are authenticated by office personnel. So that makes up the difference as well as far and as well as a little bit of money that would be applied for the Monroe project. But most of that is funded by district capacity. So because it's a performance-based plan, we are sharing exactly what it is. This is a tax increase. There's no two ways about it. We're not paying a capital tax at this point in time. This is a tax increase. But I also want to combine that with this is also an investment in our schools and in ourselves. If you own a $100,000 home, it's a $262 tax increase annually, which is $21.83 a month. And you can see how that plays out for a $200,000 home and a $300,000 home. Now, there is a narrative in our community around. Please excuse this. Lost connection. So that 262 increase is based on this tax rate, $1.50. That's a historic low. It's not based on, there's no funny business, it's not based on the $3.01. At 262 is where we are at today. So again, it's not 175% tax increase based on the 2018 rate, okay? It is a 37% increase based on that. So finally, to summarize our efforts this evening and in this presentation, we believe that this maximizes the use of state dollar. It keeps rates consistent over time, and our commitment to that, and our board is here this evening to echo that commitment moving forward. Modernize and replaces schools that are highest in need. Establishes a K-6 or K-5, 6, 8, and 9, 12 system. We haven't really hit on this point, but this is what Port Angeles used to have. Before the mills closed down and we had 2 elementary schools, we had a K-5, 6, 8, and 9, 12 system. When the mills closed down and we lost about 1,000 FTE, full-time equivalent students, we had to consolidate into K-6 schools, 7, 8, and 9, 12. We want to get back to a true middle school. And I've been in public education for 31 years. And it really didn't dawn on me. Last year I was working with the middle school staff and they brought something to my attention that I hadn't really paid attention to. I was working with them on expectations around culture and climate of the building. And one challenge that they're facing is they have a 50% turnover every year. Just think about that, 7th and 8th grade. So, when incoming 7th graders come in, they're all new. The only existing students from the building are current 8th graders, and then they leave the next year. We want to make the middle school a more healthy experience for our students. And part of that is time spent in a healthy setting with committed middle school teachers. Finally, it incorporates modern safety and security features, and if this passes, we will have controlled access to all buildings K-8 in our district moving forward, with working on a plan at the high school at a later date. And then finally, it encourages community involvement in this plan, and I can't undersell this. This is really important because this is a community commitment. This board will be committed to putting together a committee of citizens and staff members across our community to help us develop buildings that meet our needs educationally and meet our needs from a community standpoint. Because Noland referenced this earlier, if this is a building capable of withstanding a 9.3 earthquake, these will not only be school buildings, but they'll also be emergency shelters if in the event of a catastrophic earthquake. So again, hitting on that investment. So finally, bringing us back to one community, one district, one future. We believe that this is a community and a district problem. We're encouraging you to vote on February 11th of 2020. And now we will open this up. Or now I'll bring it back to you, Paula.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. Thank you, Mr. Brewer and Mr. Duce. Now it's time for you, the audience, to get your questions answered, and I'll ask you to step up to the microphone and be sure to give your name before you ask your question. We're going to do our traditional League of Women Voters time limits, but we're going to try to be a little bit more forgiving. We're often not very forgiving at all with time limits. We'd like to limit you to 1 minute to ask your question, so get to the point. And we'd like our answerers to limit their answers to 2 minutes. I may ask for a follow-up if I feel that the question has not been fully answered. And we're doing this as a test, so don't get used to it. If you want to jot your question down ahead of time, and I encourage you to do this so you can be clear and succinct, League volunteers have index cards and pens or pencils. If you'd like to have a card, just raise your hand and they'll make sure that you have one. And I'd also like to give everyone in the audience the chance to ask a question before taking multiple questions from the same person. That seems fair. If you can't come to the mic or you don't want to come to the mic and you want a League member to read your question for you, that's fine. Just write it down on the card, make sure it's legible, and put your name on the card. Before I turn it over to the audience, I just want to ask you again, Marty, if you could, to clarify what you said there at the end about the signs around the community that say 175% tax increase. Could you explain again what the actual current rate is and what the increase would be and where that 175 number is coming from?
Okay. So I would like to challenge each of us in the audience to do an exercise that I actually did last weekend. If you go on the assessor's website and you look at your actual taxes during the 2018 year, you'll get a number, all of your taxes inclusive. And then look at your 2019 tax year. Mine, as each of you, if you live in the Port Angeles School District, is lower in the 2019 calendar year. And, so then I got into a little more detail on my own private taxes or personal taxes. And the only significant reduction in taxes was the school tax. So coming to the final assessment, the reason we are paying less taxes in 2019 is because of the work of this administrative team and this board to reduce $2.6 million from our operational budget and balance our budget on $1.50 to $1.50 when we had capacity to go to $2.50. Okay? So how the mechanics of the 175% increase is based on the $1.50 tax rate this year. So if you take 262 and you add the percentage increase off of $1.50, that's 175%. But if you look back and you do the exercise I'm asking you to, go to your 2018 taxes, look what you were actually paying to public education that year, which was $3.01. It's an additional $1.11 from that point, which is a 37% increase. It is an increase. No matter, I mean, we're asking our folks to pay a capital tax. We're asking our folks to make a capital investment. So it is, simply put, an increase to our taxes.
Okay, so it sounds like this most recent year was almost like an aberration because of the McCleary. And what you're doing is you're looking at the 2018
Yes.
rate.
It was initially imposed by the legislature at $1.50, then they gave us capacity to raise that. We didn't take that offer, and because we understand that there's a point where folks feel like they can invest in their schools. This is a very supportive community when it comes to public education. There are no two ways about that. But, you know, as all of us sitting here in this room and across our community, we have only so much we can give. And so we made some tough decisions by reducing staff, by reducing supplies, reducing materials, reducing our overall costs to balance on that $1.50, in hopes that we can now turn to the community to say, can we have an investment now into our capital needs?
Okay, questions?
Yeah.
Please, to the mic there at the podium and state your name and ask your
Jim
question.
Hegwood. I was the president of the Chamber of Commerce in 2019. I'd like to start just with a quick statement, then ask a question of the board to elaborate a little bit further. So since early fall, the Chamber of Commerce has analyzed this plan and concluded that this is a good plan at the right time to proceed with that, and we fully support that. And the question I have, first of all, let me give you some facts about why I think we got to where we are today. In the last 26 years, the citizens of Port Angeles have invested $19.4 million into capital investments into our schools in the last 26 years. My question, if you could elaborate a little bit further, is about how are schools paid for in the state of Washington, number one. And number two is, when we talk about capital versus maintenance, how are those asks made to the public, so we can understand a little bit further about how we got to where we are today, but also how that's framed against the ask and moving forward with this 27-year plan. So again, two questions about how are schools paid for in the state of Washington, and also how are capital investments, capital improvements made versus maintenance on an ongoing basis.
Okay. I'll take the funding, you take capital maintenance. Okay, how schools are funded in the state of Washington. And I've been asked this question before, and I've given some thought. There's really three ways for us to fund schools in the state of Washington. The state of Washington assumes and expects that it's a community investment. There's nobody that will come in and build our schools for us. It's a community investment, and at the end of the project, you own the facility. It's not a private citizen. But really, there's three ways. One, you bond it. Two, you levy it. Or three, you just get really lucky and a private citizen comes in and builds a school for you. And I've been in public education for 31 years. I've never heard of that. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but it's not very, it's not very frequent. Let's put it that way. So those are the three ways that schools are built in the state of Washington. I think there's some disconnect because in other states, maybe where it's an income tax state, like I think Wyoming is one of those states, the state actually does come in and build schools. But that's not the case for the state of Washington. It's a community investment, and schools either bond it or they levy it.
And as far as how the maintenance gets done, the school district has a maintenance team. The school district actually invests a little bit more than what the state allocation for maintenance is into our facilities, and that keeps our day-to-day going. At this point, we have over 650,000 square feet of roofing, and we don't have any leaks. All of our heaters work, but we don't have the funds to do whole system changes. So again, when we're talking about the rating of the buildings and we start talking about the heating systems or the mechanical systems, that gets a little bit out of the day-to-day maintenance, and that's what capital improvements are for.
Could you talk a little bit about the Franklin experience?
Yeah, so a few years ago at Franklin Elementary School, we had our main breaker that we had to turn it off for the building, and we tried turning it back on. And it's a three-phase main breaker, and it just didn't turn back on. 2 of the 3 phases would engage, but not the third. The maintenance department, and we've got some electricians on staff, could not get it to go, so we hired a couple of contractors local in town. We finally got it to go after another 2 days. So I'd like to keep going on this if I can. Yeah. So I went to the board and I told them that we have an event that if this breaker doesn't reset, that we could have a real problem with the school. We could be without power. And a main breaker to a building is a big deal. It's not just a small change. So I worked with the city engineering and the local building, this local electrical inspector, and we designed the project, and it was going to be this project. So I had a mechanical electrical engineer design it. We had a biddable spec. I took it down to get a permit. The city approved it. It went to plan review. Plan review looked at it and said, no, you're not just doing this part. If you're going to be doing this now, the project is this. And so this project grew out of what I could do with the money that I've asked from the board. And if I did that project, it also kicked in other code requirements. And so it's a project that has not been done because it grew so big so fast.
Yeah, so when we start to modernize schools and make revisions within schools, there's many other code requirements. So yes, we do maintain our schools on the simple maintenance, but when it comes to electrical upgrades or pipe fitting upgrades or HVAC system upgrades, we simply don't have the capacity and the budget to do that on an annual basis, but we also can't afford the codes that we kick into to upgrade the entire system. And the last thing I want to say about that is this district commits to maintenance. And this is my personal opinion. I worked in public education for 31 years. And, the age of our facilities and the quality of maintenance that we have within each of our schools is very, very good. And I'm proud of this maintenance team for the work they've done to keep these buildings operational. And that doesn't come by just chance. We're funded, we talked about the prototypical model. We're funded 6 positions from the state of Washington for maintenance and grounds. This district doubles down on that, and we currently have 12 full-time employees. So let me say that again. We're funded for 6, we have 12. And so we double down on that, and we commit to the maintenance of our schools. And I'm proud to say that, we're offering the tours that are at Stevens, and I encourage everybody to come on one of the tours and take a look for yourself at the quality of maintenance. We simply don't have the capacity to do a major overhaul of all the HVACs at Stevens Middle School within the budget that's dictated to us from the state of Washington. But as far as maintenance and keeping the water out and our systems of high quality, clean, and working well, we have the team to do that.
Okay, great. That was maybe a little bit more than 2 minutes.
Sorry.
It's okay. Another question.
Marilee Smith. So we live in a city where, according to the U.S. Census, 20% of the population is 65 years and over on a fixed income, where 13.7% of the citizens under 65 are on disability. Our per capita income averages $25,000 per year, which is 55% lower than the state average. And the median household income is $42,000, which is 40% lower than the state average. 21% of our citizens live below the poverty line. 12% receive some public assistance. 49% of our population are renters. We have a high unemployment rate at 9%, and we have a lack of family wage jobs and no hope in sight in that regard. The IMF is warning, along with the Pearson Institute, that in the next 5 years we'll probably see another recession. Some argue we've never been out of the 2008 recession. And this is pretty much evidenced by the homeless we see around. So my question is, was the citizen financial impact of this proposed levy considered? What about the average person's quality of life and affordability in Port Angeles? So exactly how do you justify this levy, which seems to ignore our demographics and our economy? Why is the emphasis on facilities over education?
Okay, thank you.
What was that last portion? I didn't hear that last sentence.
What's the emphasis on facilities over education? And actually, my other question is, what about sixth grade bullying? Because that was the reason we originally moved the sixth graders out of middle school.
Okay, thank you.
I'll take that one. So, yes, this board is elected by the public, and they are representative of our community. And so I believe, yes, you know, the demographics of our community, you know, have been considered. It is an increase, and but it comes for all the right reasons in my assessment. That concept where we talked about the difference between SQUIM and PA in assessed valuation. SQUIM could go out for the money that we're borrowing or taking or asking from our voters. They could have a millage rate much less than ours. Instead of $2.62, it might be $1.37. I'm just picking a number, but it would be far less because they have $1 billion more to tax. So I think, sure, you know, this is an increase, but we're investing in ourselves. And if we can encourage, you know, development and building to occur in our community by having high quality schools, and that's what brings young families to this community, is high quality schools, that lessens the burden on you and I. Simply put, if we have a builder come into this town and build 100 new homes, and we're collecting $52 million, those 100 new taxpayers reduce your cost and my cost.
What jobs?
Then the other side of that is this. If we get to the point where we articulated 10 years from now, we have 4 of our 5 schools in unsatisfactory condition, if one of those schools is condemned, the reverse impact of that is if we have to put out for, let's say, Franklin, and this is a hypothetical, but if we have to represent Franklin as a school of 40 portables, I can assure you that families will not choose to go there. Families will leave our schools and our community to go elsewhere. And then the reverse happens to you and I. Then our taxes go up. Because again, we have so many taxpayers divided by what it needs to operate our public education system. So we can invest in ourselves and bring new families and communities and developers to our community, or we can go down this path of getting to the point where we potentially have to condemn a school, and then what? So yes, it's a hard investment for many of us. We understand that. I think this board does understand that. But no one else is going to build our schools for us. This is our commitment to our community.
I'm going to hold the question about 6th grade because I think that's an important question, but I want to make sure that we give other people in the audience a chance to ask their questions. Please step to the mic.
Excuse me, may I speak to that?
I'm going to hold it. I've put it on hold just to
All
give
right.
more
Come
people
on up.
the opportunity to speak, but I do want to give you the chance to come
Thank
back
you.
to that.
Hi, good evening, Stuart Holloway. So I'm all for the safety of children is absolutely important. When I went to high school, I graduated in 1986. When I was a freshman, it turned traditional, where we weren't able to leave the school. We weren't able to eat in the classrooms, wear a hat. Even drink water, we had to get a pass. So I was just wondering, if this passes, will the school turn traditional? As far as keeping it clean and stuff, because as a former custodian, it was a lot of work cleaning food on a continuous basis. And I had another question. So in the middle of construction...
I'm going to have you hold that question, okay? Because I want to make sure that we give multiple people a chance. Hang on to it, and if we have time, we'll come back to you. I'm not sure I understood.
I don't know.
Do you understand what I mean by traditional? As far as not, the safety, because in high school, the kids, they just leave at lunch and stuff. We weren't able to leave.
You're talking about a closed campus?
Correct. Yes.
When you say traditional, you mean
Yeah.
the campus is closed?
Correct.
And would that change
Well,
under this plan? Is that your
Or
question?
would this, I mean, if you build a new school, will the schools have a traditional as far as not being able to leave the campus and stuff?
Okay, okay.
Because I know that some of the kids...
So is there a policy change?
Is it going to be
I don't-
maybe a more stricter policy as far as...
Got it.
I don't think that we're gonna make a decision on what the high school is gonna look like at this point. I mean, that's still that many years away, and the middle school students are not allowed to leave the campus currently, and they won't be allowed to, no.
Good, thank you. Next question.
I'd like to jump in and say one more thing
yes.
about that, though.
Be fast.
So one of the things that we are looking about, again, is single entrance point and safety of the kids. One of the things at Stevens that we wanted that I don't think I brought out is that for class changes, when this is all done, kids are not going outside for class changes. Again, when the high school is done, kids will not be going outside for class changes. It'll be under one roof, and we will be, there will be PE outside, but we'll be having the kids in a safer environment all day long.
Okay, next question, please. And remember to state your name, please.
Hi, Richard Wade. I'm going to apologize to Mr. Brewer because I'm going to blindside him with some information he's not going to be very happy about. Here's copies of the Interdistrict Cooperation Agreement for Financing and Operation of the North Olympic Peninsula Skills Center. The original agreement dated 2002 and two subsequent renewal agreements dated 2007 and 2012. All three copies were signed and dated by board members of the participating districts: Cape Flattery, Crescent, Quileute, Sequim, Peninsula College, and Port Angeles, the host district. These documents clearly outline the financial obligations of each of the partner districts. Here I'm holding a copy of a Peninsula Daily News article written by Jesse Major. The article is dated June 7, 2017, and it quotes Dr. Mark Jackson as stating, Jackson said, at the inception of the Skills Center, there was a gentleman's agreement that Port Angeles School District, as the host, would pick up the tab. In a nutshell, the statement means this district and
Can you get to your question,
misled
sir?
a state agency with the intent to gain access to grant funding, not to mention honoring the financial operational terms and conditions. It also means for 15 years, the taxpayers of Port Angeles School District paid for all operations and expenses of NOPSC.
So can you state your question,
Technically
please?
challenged, an
Sir,
understatement. Now, my question is,
good.
considering the aforementioned is true, do you seriously expect the taxpayers of Port Angeles School District to entrust you with $52.6 million, considering your flagrant breach of public trust?
Great,
And
thank
I know some
you.
of you can't answer this question, but there's some people sitting here tonight that can.
Thank you, sir.
My question is posed to the three that can answer that question. And you know what I'm talking about.
Thank you very much. Can you have a
Yeah,
seat?
we're not here actually to discuss the Skills Center. We're here to discuss
Talking-
all of our schools that are falling apart
Talking about
currently.
trust.
So what,
The question has to do with
trust.
why should we trust you? $52.6 million.
That is what this plan is set out, is to exactly engender trust. We're going to show you what we're doing, and you can come back and say you didn't do it. That's sort of the point of it. Now, what happened with the Skills Center? That's a whole other topic that would take us a long time. But you say we paid the freight for all of these students. 90% of the Skills Center students were our students. So it's not as though we were paying to educate the Cape Flattery School District. They were our kids anyhow.
We don't have
But-
enough time to get into the details of what you're talking about.
Okay.
My question
Cindy,
still
do you
is
have something you want to add?
So by the consent of all the superintendents, the skill center went away.
I'm
So
sorry, what?
by the consent of all the superintendents, the skill center went away. So the skill center is a whole different issue regarding, yes, like Sarah said, the majority of those kids were our kids. We had some satellite programs in in Cape Flattery and in Forks. It didn't work out. So now it's gone. So, we felt, personally, I felt career in tech was really important. I have 2 kids who went to Port Angeles High School and did career in tech. So I think career in tech is really important for this community. I also think we need to do academics. So, plus we lost a whole bunch of kids. We lost 1,000 kids in 10 years in Port Angeles.
We did
So
what?
we lost 1,000 kids in 10 years in Port Angeles by declining
How
enrollment.
did we lose 1,000 kids? Where'd they go? Fall off a cliff or something?
No, we lost jobs.
Oh, so they moved, they left the areas.
Yeah, they left the area.
So
That's why we
then
closed
that goes
schools,
to-
and that's why we refigured the K-5. That's why we did all that stuff.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to have a seat, please, because I want to make sure that we have time for other people to ask questions.
Point.
Yeah.
Right now, the
Sir,
school
please.
population is down. Still low.
So you don't think it's going to grow?
Do you see it growing?
Okay.
Has it grown in the last 10 years?
It's grown in the last 10 years, yes, it has.
You just said we lost 1,000 students.
That was from 2001 to 2011.
When the mills closed, after the mills closed, we lost 1,000
I'll be in
students.
contact with you, Mr. Brewer, and we'll discuss this matter further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. Next question.
Can I add one clarifying point?
Very,
And
very-
I wasn't here during that time.
You were not.
But I do not believe that any portion of the Skill Center was bonded by the citizens of Port
It
Angeles.
was not.
It was not.
There were grant funds, state funds, college funds. So, and state funds are citizens' dollars, but specific to Port Angeles residents, there was not a bond of that magnitude.
But there was a gentleman's agreement circumventing all of that protocol.
This sounds
so-
like it could be a whole different meeting,
And so-
folks.
I'd love to
And-
have a meeting about it.
And the League of Women Voters will consider that, but not tonight. Next question.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lena Washke, and one of the questions I have is, and I might have my facts incorrect here, but when the Jefferson School was rebuilt or improved, my understanding was that there was limitations on the size of the school based on the current enrollment and not allowing for any growth in or changes in students. So with the projects that you're proposing here with this money, how is that considered as far as the number of students? Is it current enrollment? Is it projected enrollment?
Great, that makes sense. Thank you.
So originally, when Jefferson was going out to the voters, there was, the first bond did not pass. The first bond for Jefferson was a 3-section school, and it had 2 gyms. And there was also going to be some work done at the Performing Arts Center at the high school. So when I say 3-section, that is 3 kindergarten classes, 3 first grade, 3 second grade. That did not pass. The second attempt, they reduced the scope of the Jefferson Elementary School. It now was a smaller 3-section building without the gyms, and the auditorium was left out. That did not pass. The third attempt was a smaller building yet with a 2-section building without the gyms, just a small elementary school, and that did pass. The original ask was in the 20 millions, the one that passed was just under 10. So that is where we got to where we're at. There was no limits of how many kids we could put on the site.
And this building at the middle school will have capacity, we show it as 930 students. It may be a little bit larger than that. Our top 3 grades, we do not have, I think our highest 3 grades, if you combine those in sequence, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we would be looking at a student enrollment about 850 to 860. So we will have some capacity for growth into the middle school, provided that this passes.
Okay, next question.
Hello, my name is Megan Euchre. My question is, when I hear you talk about both a 5-year plan and a 30-year plan, I hear a lot of jobs. I hear construction, I hear plumbing, I hear electrical. And I just wonder what consideration the school board or administration has given to how they can make sure that those are local jobs. And it's a great potential there for creating those jobs in our school district.
That's yours, Noland.
All right. So when we go to accept a bid on a project, as long as it's a responsible bidder, we have to accept that project. So what we've found out and what we've actually seen are when we start looking at the last 2 construction generals, RAS Construction got Jefferson Elementary, and before that, Kirtley Cole got Dry Creek Elementary. RAS came in and they went right down to the union halls and they hired the laborers, they hired the carpenters because they did not bring that with them. They looked at the local subcontractors here, and we had multiple subcontractors from Port Angeles on the jobs. In fact, most of them that are on my small works roster were the ones that I was walking around seeing on the projects. So while we can't say that we can guarantee that the subcontractors here will get the work, from what I've seen on the last 2 projects, that was the case. So, and again, when we were doing the construction so when part of the Jefferson Elementary remodel was also the music room at Stevens and a gym addition at Roosevelt. If you'd have watched the kids as they were walking by, they were pointing out, well, there's my dad. And their dads were working on the projects as well. So that was something that I saw a lot. And I knew most of the subcontractors on the projects, again, because it's who I work with.
We're responsible, as Nolan referenced, to take the lowest qualified bidder. But, you know, my experience coming out of Mason County when we built a school, many of the subs, all of the subs came from local. And why that is there's no mobilization. It's cheaper. And so, you know, although we can't guarantee it because we'd be breaking, you know, the public bid law, it's gonna happen because you can't mobilize, you know, electrical group contractor out of Seattle to do the same work that our local unions can do here at a cheaper cost.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Brendan Meyer, live in Port Angeles. I've never been so scared to vote against the levy. Tonight you harped on single point entry, as well as this building will be able to survive the Cascadian event, 9.0 earthquake, with, you know, thousands of aftershocks afterward. I think it's just a little disingenuous to say that it could survive. I don't think that, and you know, especially with Stevens in a valley. Yeah, that's it. I just stand on the morals of the plan and just don't harp so much. That if you could, next time you give the presentation, not harp so much on the single point entry. It felt a little fear-mongering, but it's important that you mention it. Just, it felt like it was harped on. So the next time you give the presentation, just don't harp on it so much. That'd be great.
Thank you. Next, sir, you had a question?
Thank you for that feedback. For me, as the leader of this organization, student and staff safety come first and foremost. So it's my lead and it'll be my end point. I think we, as educators, need to do everything we can to keep our students safe.
This gentleman here has a question, please.
My name's Dan Anderson. I'm a retired contractor from Seattle, and I'm new here. First, my condolences to Noland for all the rules that keep him from doing what he should be doing. Okay, first, Port Angeles School District academics are outstanding. That's their statement. The sixth graders are doing fine where they are. There's literally no reason to move them other than getting more money from the state. We can upgrade Stevens School for less than $1 million. We also have 5.2 million in a special fund, I guess it's called a reserve fund. We can install whisper quiet ductless heat pumps in each classroom. They have both air conditioning and heat. We can do a 50-year guarantee roof membrane. And we can do concrete buttresses on each end of the glulam beams. Thank you. And that's not even a question, that's just a clarification on an alternative. We can do all this for $1 million without needing to add a new school building.
Thank you. Did you want to respond?
So I would challenge the $1 million for a few things, yeah. So when we start talking about the systems at Stevens, we're talking about plumbing, we're talking about seismic, we're talking about safety, we're talking about fire sprinklers. You start doing any building work, and the buildings in the 50s and 60s were built with asbestos. So what we have in a lot of our buildings. So first of all, you're not going to do it without doing your asbestos abatement. Second, the systems that we're bringing in, the little whisper quiet wall packs are not legal to have in our buildings. For our requirements, the requirement is 15 cubic feet per person per minute of fresh air coming in. And you also have to, so if you think about it, you got 25 to 30 people in a classroom, you're bringing in 450 cubic feet of fresh air per minute coming inside. It's not just heating the air in the building, it's bringing the fresh air in. Then you've got to reclaim the heat going out. Your systems that you're talking about are going to be way more than that. In fact, if we go back and just look at a heat pump project that was done at Roosevelt in 2004, there were 20 heat pumps. It was over $1.5 million in 2004. And that's not fire sprinkler, that's not seismic upgrades. So I challenge your numbers.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Lou Miner, and my question first would be, will the building itself consider a wing for the sixth graders? I really appreciated your culture and the need for the three grades to be together, because there's just continuity in behavior when you see people ahead of you for 2 years behave and have expectations. So when I was in middle school, the sixth graders had a wing, and they were really in their own territory. They didn't pass the hallways with seventh and eighth graders. They ate lunch with themselves, and they did that because they came from 5 different elementary schools. So their role was to get acquainted and become a part of the school, and we did that with assemblies and pride kinds of things. Am I done? Okay. So is there going to be a wing so that the sixth graders will have that ability to be, I guess we want to say, protected?
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, in a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade model, that's traditionally what happens.
Okay.
Yes. And
I don't think everybody understands that.
yeah. The three populations typically work off of a schedule, and so their lunchtime is at the same period of time, and their core classes fall at the same period of time. So yes, there is in the daily schedule there is isolation of the grades, but then there's opportunities for school culture and climate and experiences like assemblies to come together and be one.
So let me follow up on that. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Marilee. I don't even see Marilee now. There you are. But you had asked the question earlier about sixth graders and bullying. And do you want to just pick up on that question at this point, since you're talking about integrating the sixth grade into middle school?
I know Dr. Long wanted to speak to it, but I'll speak to just the history of it. We did not move the sixth grade back to elementary because of bullying. We closed Roosevelt Junior High, or middle school, and then there was not space at Stevens Middle School to take all of Roosevelt into Stevens at that time, and the only way to make that space was to move the sixth graders back into elementary school. So I just want to quash that. That was never the reason of moving sixth grade back into elementary, it was for bullying. Go ahead.
And that was not what I wanted to speak to, but I
I'm
certainly
sorry.
agree. Although I was not on the board, I would have voted in that direction. I wanted to speak to the lady who talked about people who retired. And I
Yeah,
don't.
same person.
Same person.
And what is,
She's back there.
Marilee, would you raise your hand so I can look at you? Uh-oh, well, I can't see you. Okay. I was a teacher for 40 years. My husband was an employee of the city of Shreveport, Louisiana. That's where I've come from. So I know, I'm the oldest person on this board by far. I've been retired now 17 years, going on 18 very soon. And again, I was a public school employee. My husband was a public city employee. We live off a pension, just like a lot of people do who are older, senior citizens. So let me say to you that I've thought about this very carefully because it's going to impact my life greatly, my tax life. I have no children in this school district. I have no grandchildren in this school district, but I've been an advocate for children for now 67 years. So I believe that it's time for this community to step up and advocate for the students now and for those to come, your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. That's it.
Thank you. Did anyone want to talk about the bullying question? Or have we dealt with that satisfactorily? Well, it's up to you.
I'll talk a little bit about it. So we have policies and procedures, and we have a bully, intimidation, and harassment policy. And if people feel like their kids are being harassed, intimidated, and bullied, they should go look at the policy and procedures, because that's what the board does, is govern policy. We adopt policy, we hire a superintendent, and we pass a budget. So there are policies and procedures that we govern, that Marty oversees, and that's how we govern within our district. We update those policies based on the laws that get changed every year. So if that is happening, that's where people need to be going and taking the steps to, if they think people are being bullied.
Yeah, and our policy is very tight. It's a state law now. We have very restrictive policy around harassment, intimidation, and bullying, and a very strict guideline on how we handle those events. And so if a child is being bullied within our system, report that to any adult on campus. We then have a protocol that we follow to make sure that we address that the best we can. Our school system is a representative of our community, and to say that we don't have any bullying in our school system would not be the truth. But when we hear of a bullying situation, our administrators, our building administrators will intervene, and our staff will intervene.
I think maybe the question was more along the lines of, do you anticipate anything more by moving the sixth graders in with the seventh and eighth graders?
No, I'm sorry. I would anticipate less, because as it is now, these kids are there for 2 years. And the behaviors at the middle school are just not as good when there are just 2 grades there. There are kids who come in, they're short time syndrome, they're out. And teachers don't have time to build the relationships that they need to be building. I see that all of our behaviors will be better in a middle school system. And I worked on the grade level redesign task force when we looked at this whole, do we move the sixth graders back? What's the best system? And I was always a junior high system, that's where I was raised. That was my preference, was a junior high. But as I did the actual research, the research is kids do better, they learn better, their behavior is better in a 6, 7, 8 system. So to say it's just about buildings, it's not just about buildings. It's about academics, it's about behaviors, it's about how kids are going to get ahead in this world and go up into the high school ready to learn. So I'm just a firm believer that independent of the need to rebuild the school, which clearly I think we need to do, independent of that, educationally, this is the right decision.
Good, thank you. Next question. Please.
Justin Henning. I wanted to expand more or less on what Megan had mentioned. I really love what you guys are trying to do. We definitely need the new schools. I'm all about the kids having the new facilities. You mentioned Roosevelt falling down and all these other places falling down, having all these different issues that they need. The problem that I'm having is more that where the work's coming from. You have spent all this time on all these different areas, and I'm in the laborers union, so I travel for work anyways. But it'd be nice to have something more solid than, I hope, that these companies are going to use us. You're taking the taxes out of us, not everywhere else. So to put something in place requiring more work out of our local workers would very much be appreciated. I don't know about you, 5 kids, I'd like to see them. I'm tired of traveling. Put the jobs here, make that a priority. You're gonna take it out of my pocket, put it back in my pocket. You're gonna get a lot more of these people voting for this if you can guarantee more of that money staying here.
Great, thank you very much. Want to talk about bid law?
Yeah.
I'll speak to that, actually.
Address that.
Would you mind if I spoke really quickly? As they said, there isn't a guarantee that they would, but my father just retired from the Carpenters Union. And for 30 years, he lived here and worked. And companies from Seattle would come out here and get bids on jobs and would hire the local carpenters. And he did that for 30 years. There was nothing that said these companies from out of town had to do that, but they did consistently each and every time. Thanks.
And, you know, I've had an opportunity to meet with the Teamsters rep and also the local labor's 252. We've had initial conversations, you know, and, you know, there's been no exchange of guarantees, but our intent is to keep work local. I mean, that's obviously our intent. And, you know, we spoke initially with Chuck Moe around an agreement of that magnitude, and that's something that, as a superintendent, I'm committed to keeping this town working. So.
And I'd like to jump in a little bit here too. So one of the things that we're being told also is you should look at modular. And one of the reasons we don't want to look at modular, there's numerous, but one of them is that the money goes away. So if we're putting modular in our district, the people who are building it in Portland or in Everett are the ones getting the money, and then they bring the project here. We want to keep these buildings built in our community.
Next question, please.
I gotta worry, I've only spoken through the mic one other time in my life. I've got a loud voice. I like to walk around the room so this meeting. But appreciate you guys putting on this meeting tonight. Appreciate what's happening in the community.
Could you state your name, please?
What's that?
State your name, please.
Just sitting there. So my name's Chuck Moe. I am a business agent for Labor's Local 252. But I'm also involved with Olympic Labor Council, who has endorsed what's going on here, the Olympic Peninsula Building Construction Trades Council. I'm involved quite a bit in the community. I've been involved throughout Western Washington. I've seen a lot of these type of presentations, and I really have to commend the school board for what you've done here. A lot of thought, a lot of long-term thought. I don't see that all the time, so I have to recognize that as being above and beyond. So I appreciate that, appreciate that more than you could know. Now, I got a question, I'll get it to you in a second. You know, we talked about, and my brother, my union brother here did talk about keeping jobs local, and I respect that. Not every job's gonna be union. I respect that. The school has to hire the lowest responsible bidder. There's certain things they can do that make sure it's a responsible bidder, but it's gotta be local. I get it. With that said, short 2 questions that all won't blend into one. When you did all this assessment, and when you assessed the financial burden on the community, did you assess how many apprenticeship opportunities this construction will provide to young citizens from this community? How many jobs it will provide to citizens from this community? And I know you're gonna hate me, but it's almost a second question. Did you think about CTE programs, career technical education, and continued relationships with contractors in the area and the trades? Thank you for your time.
Great.
So,
Good job at the mic, too.
yeah.
Mike makes me nervous. How many people doesn't Mike make me nervous?
Who would like to take
So,
that?
I'll jump in first. My trade is electrical. So I went to a trade school. I was an electrician for years. I get the apprenticeship, and that's one of the things I pointed out on the slide. If we start construction of Stevens Middle School in 2023, and we work through the first phase, we work through the second phase, we're also doing the Franklin Elementary School and the high school, and you start looking at the trades, the electricians that are going to have apprenticeships on the job, and our L&I requires the apprenticeships on those jobs. So this will be gone through the state of Washington, follow the rules. You're looking at the pipe fitters, you're looking at electricians. And what that does to this community is you're now establishing a new set of standards and kids with the ability to be part of the trades from that point on. So yeah, we're looking at about 6 years of construction in Port Angeles, and that's good for us.
The second phase of that question, what was the second phase?
It was about the CTE, career
Right.
tech education.
Absolutely. We're doubling down on our CTE programs in the Port Angeles School District. We have a broad range of offerings at the high school. We've moved that down to the middle schools at this point in time, offered in the form of STEM. This year, for the first time, we have programming classes, engineering classes, that are now first time at Stevens Middle School. The challenge with that work at Stevens Middle School is the electrical. In some cases, we don't have the electrical capacity to do exactly what we want to do with the space. But no, and actually Cindy Crum, the CTE director, is here this evening, which leads our CTE programs. She's now full-time at the district level, and that's the intent, is to double down and build programs that support the vocational trades of this community. And so our vision for the very near future is to add programs that will build the skilled labor that we need in Clallam County. What exactly that is, that's Cindy's job to make sure she's working with the trades, because we're not talking today, we're talking 5 years from now and 10 years out. So we need help from individuals just like you, Chuck, that can help us define what that program needs to look like. And so, in the old funding model, and Chuck, you and I have spoke about this, in the old funding model around CTE programs from the state, we were always underfunded. And we'd always have to contribute local funds to make our programs work. That's no longer the case. The one area where we have significant funding from our lawmakers, and I'm very thankful for that, is our CTE programs. So we have money to invest. We want to invest those dollars and build our programs to represent our county.
Thank you. Next question.
So Chuck, you and I probably need to talk. So I work for a water district west of Port Angeles, and so I've been working on that apprenticeship program that's out there right now, and I'm taking that to tribal leaders across the state, and I've been working with other elected officials from the city and the county about how do we start more of that in the county.
So great, thank you. Yes, please, come to the mic.
I'm Edna Peterson, and I'm older than Sandy Long. I have worked in Port Angeles and lived in Port Angeles since 1955, and we absolutely have a drought at this moment on improving our school situation. And I support this levy. I don't really have a question, but kind of, sort of. I was here when George Ellis, Superintendent of Schools, rapped the gavel and said, if you don't pass the levy, you don't have a sports program. And he wiped the sports program out and the music program out and said, take care of your schools. So we did. I know you're not going to do that, Marty, but what a great way to make us listen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edna.
Next question. Okay, there was a gentleman, you had a second question? Yeah, that will be our last one, it looks like.
So, my wife and I were going to build in front of our existing house, since our lot is large. We will not be building due to the fact that the house we're gonna build is in the 200 range, maybe more. So there's lost jobs there, income from us renting, so there's that one thing. Another thing is that I had a question, Central Service across from here is for sale? Now is that the school district's building? So where is that million and change that you're asking? Does that go to you guys? Because can you use that for this, start this project?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, when the district, thank you for asking that question. When the district sells a public property, that money goes into our capital fund. So yes, it will help with the capital needs across the district. Not only that, but the eventual sale of Fairview will be the same. That will go into capital funds. This year, because we did move into the Lincoln Center, to consolidate costs, because really we were operating 2 administrative buildings. We had additional space, and so we have what we call partner in education space, and so now the United Way has actually joined our district in the Lincoln Center, and they're a renter or a tenant of our district. And we've made the conscious decision of the renting fees that we make from United Way will go into capital as well, so that we can continue to, double down on our investment for the future. So we're being creative, trying to think outside the box and bring more money to the table to help with our capital needs and facilities needs moving forward. And oh, by the way, we do have additional space, and after this campaign, when we have time again, we will be putting out another RFP for additional partners within that space, because we still have, a couple thousand square feet of space that we could rent to another partner. So, thank you.
Any other questions before we wrap up, please?
Less question. Paul Cunningham. I live in Port Angeles. My daughters are sophomores at Port Angeles High School, and 11 years ago they started at Franklin Elementary. Actually, one started at Queen of Angels because you didn't have full day kindergarten back then. I just want to say thank you. For our new gentleman who can fix it for $1 million, I actually would love to hear that solution. But I've watched Mr. Duce and others in this room for 17 years work on this. This plan is thoughtful. You have listened to the community, and I commend you for that. So I just really want to say thank you. I don't know if it's going to pass. I think it will. Right now, I look around Port Angeles, I'm really hopeful. We have a new Boys and Girls Club. We have a new swimming pool. We have a new performing arts center. We have a new downtown hotel, and we have people who graduate from Port Angeles High School coming back to this town and opening business downtown, Gastropub, Bourbon West, et cetera, et cetera. So this town is on the upswing. I feel good about this levy. I think it's gonna pass. For the young lady who has trouble paying more, I'll say, professionally I'm a physician, and for 17 years I've been involved in recruiting specialists and primary care docs to this community. If this doesn't pass, if you think you have a difficult time finding a physician in this community now, I hate to say what's going to be going on 5 to 10 years from now. But I don't want to talk about the negative. I think this is going to pass, and I think this is going to be another feather in the cap for Port Angeles, the community going forward for the next 30 years. So thank you for all your work, every one of you up there.
So that brings me to a thought that I heard Jim Hagwood say at the PABA debate. He made reference to there's a significant community or a significant private investment happening downtown, $140 million between performing arts centers and hotels and parking garages. And his point on that day was, if we match that with a public investment in our schools, the sky's the limit to this community. We're worth it. Our students are worth it, this community's worth it, and we're here to work hard to try to make that happen.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone, for your excellent participation, your very, very good questions. Before you leave, don't leave yet, I have things to say. We've passed out an evaluation form. This is a little bit different format. We'd love to get your feedback on how this worked or didn't for you tonight.
We used to do that.
Remember that in Washington, you can now register to vote up to and including Election Day. So you can also go to votewa.gov to verify that your voter registration is up to date. Ballots are being mailed out today and tomorrow. They have to be postmarked or placed in a drop box by Tuesday, February 11th. Excuse me, folks, can you please quiet? We're still recording this, and I want to make sure this important information gets out to folks who are going to see this on video as well. There are school levy measures on the ballot for Crescent and Cape Flattery school districts as well. All the ballot boxes through the county will be open and available for you to deposit your ballot. So please remember to register and to vote, and thanks again for coming, and now I'm done. Thank you.
I hope it